Look, the lockdown series has been going really well. Can't remember how many we've had. We're going to kind of shift to a sort of fortnightly drumbeat from here on in, unless we get howls of complaint that they're too frequent or not enough. So we're listening out to you. It's going to be recorded, so I hope there's no objections there. Sarah, if you want to hit the record button, that's really good, so that those who are missing it can tune in later. Usual ground rules: stay on mute unless you're speaking. Hold questions to the end, and I'll try and herd the cats either via the chat or just waving or using the wave hand. It's a fairly select gathering, so hopefully we can have a good conversation. And indeed, Jason and the gang are effectively offering sort of free consultations here live while we speak. So let's hope they're not kind of in too narrow a space and they're of appeal to everybody, but don't hesitate when Jason opens the floor. Few parish notices, if I may, everyone. Three today. The Institute launched its Centre for Corporate Governance this time last week. I'm very grateful to Jason for being bounced by that event, which caught us. It's right in the space of our Tuesday at 2. Really fabulous commentators wishing us the best and talking to good corporate governance with 500 people tuning in. I think of the themes I pick out, a lot of clamour for kind of putting sustainability and inclusivity there at the heart of our businesses. It certainly hits the spot for me and hits the spot for the Institute. Had a good wash up with my colleagues across the country the day after, and the kind of excitement about what we were doing there was quite palpable. So really great, and I guess reminding ourselves of our ultimate aim. If we're better directors, we can build a better world, and the Centre for Corporate Governance is going to help us there. So that's that one. Next one is the rollout of our online training. We've really now translated that kind of world-class certificate and company direction and the rest into an online offering. Demand is already very high, and extraordinary good feedback from those who have had the benefit of some of the sessions already. So if you're interested in bagging some of these early slots, please email us at iod.southwest@iod.com. You'll get through to Sarah or the local professional development guru, Kerry Ann, who's sitting there. Kerry Ann, do you want to just give us a quick 30-second plug there?
Yes, absolutely fantastic. As you know, IOD has always held face-to-face courses, but we turned around to virtually very quickly. Feedback has been phenomenal, with a lot of people that have booked on face-to-face opting for virtual at the end of the year as well. So yes, please do join us and start your journey to become a better director.
I see what you did there. Very good. Okay, and lastly, thirdly, we're still working hard behind the scenes, helping every member of the Institute, particularly as we're now easing out of lockdown. We've been working hard to get under the Chancellor's skin before he speaks tomorrow. Still not quite sure what he's going to say, but let's just say 5 things that we've been particularly pressing on. Business investment incentives, reducing employment costs. We're proposing a recovery grant scheme, particularly targeting those directors who fell through the cracks during lockdown. We're plugging support for scale-ups and startup investments, and we're still plugging easing the burden of business debt. Okay, and we'll unpack a bit more of that in the newsletter in our update that is now fortnightly and will be hitting your inboxes Thursday morning. Okay, so without further ado, let me introduce Jason Berry and his colleagues Lee and Mike, experts all who can answer your questions. So Jason's kind of home is trading standards at Devon County Council, but he covers a very wide patch across the southwest, pretty close to our patch. And his approach is to try and flip the idea of trading standards as regulators and enforcers to being advisors and really helping. And boy, has he and the team been busy during COVID-19 lockdown, and even busier as we ease out now. And a lot done under the banner of the Better Business for All partnership. For those who've been reading our fortnightly or weekly or fortnightly updates, we've been putting his link to his COVID-19 toolkit in there, and it's been updated, been watching it being updated as more and more advice is coming from government, and then he and a gang interpret that advice into something a bit more useful. So without any further ado, Jason, it's all yours.
Hi, good afternoon. Thanks for your time, and thanks everyone for zooming in on us today. And like Mia says, we've got Lee Taylor, who's a Trading Standards Officer, and Mike Berry from Environmental Health. And we're here really just to try and help you walk through the toolkit we've got, and I'll put a link in the chat room for you to have a look at that and download that if you're not already from the newsletters you've been getting. If I did official flannel first, and then perhaps we can be a bit more relaxed after that. The Better Business for All, it's actually an initiative set up by BAYS, and it's basically trying to bring local partnerships between businesses and business support and regulators across Devon, Somerset, Torbay and Plymouth to promote local prosperity whilst maintaining public protection. We aim to improve how regulatory service is delivered, exactly what Mia says, and more of a support than enforcement. So instead of you getting a penalty notice slapped in your office, we're there to actually pick up the phone to have a conversation and see how we can support you becoming compliant or doing what you need to. So Better Business for All is all about that. It's highlighting the benefits of regulation without fear of enforcement activity. And it's also about ensuring that the regulatory staff better understand how your businesses operate and the pressures that you guys face as well. To give you an idea of roughly what sort of areas we cover, of environmental health, I've mentioned, trading standards I've always mentioned as well, which is consumer protection and the like, licensing, weights and measures, farming standards, animal welfare. Those are the sort of areas that we cover, and we cover across, like I say, Somerset, Devon, Torbay and Plymouth. And I think it's particularly important now that we've had everyone's had a hell of a ride. I mean, the businesses have had a hell of a ride. There's no doubt about that. And in this time of uncertainty, I'm going to rhyme now. In these times of uncertainty, we hope that we can possibly support you to survive, and if necessary, revive. And of course, when we come out of this, thrive. So I hope you like what I did there. So we'll go through what this toolkit is and how you can utilize it. Everything you should potentially require to be safe and open your business safely to your employees, your customers and suppliers are sitting within this one document. So we've pulled together dozens of pages and dozens of PDFs into one document to make it an interactive action plan for you and your business. So you can actually just click on there and actually complete a risk assessment. We've given you ideas about what the risk assessment should look like, and it's a template for you to fill in. You don't have to go searching for it. It should all be there ready to be used. And then so as we walk through it, Sarah will play it in a second, but we need to be mindful that every workspace is different and every employee's needs are different. So as you're prepared to start your business, I'm assuming some of you have, you need to consult your employees, because every employee has the right to a safe working environment. So that's the flannel, that's the waffle, that's the official line. If we could play that film then, Sarah, and if everyone to listen to this for 6 minutes, and then we can have questions afterwards.
Of the Better Business for All COVID-19 Toolkit, considerations for restarting your business safely. This toolkit contains template documents and checklists to help you complete your COVID-19 risk assessment. Here you can see the template documents available to download, a brief description of what it can be used for, and finally links to further relevant web pages and resources. We start with 5 steps to working safely. This is a summary of things to focus on when carrying out your risk assessment. There is also the COVID secure poster, which you can complete once you've carried out your risk assessment. We then have the COVID-19 risk assessment generic version. This is based on the Health and Safety Executive's template risk assessment model. You can use this in addition to the Working Safely During Coronavirus guidance, which is available from government, and also any industry-specific guidance to pick out risk mitigating factors which are relevant to your business. As an alternative, we have also included a couple of risk assessments with controls taken from the Working Safely guidance. The generic risk assessment starts by identifying what the hazards are, who might be harmed and how, what you are doing already, whether you need to do anything else to manage the risk, and whether there are any actions that need to be taken and when these need to be taken by. If needed, we have also included an extra sheet for you to record any of the actions that you've identified. For a basic overview of the controls required to control coronavirus, we would recommend the Health and Safety Executive's Working Safely During the Coronavirus Outbreak short guide, and also Talking with Your Workers About Preventing Coronavirus. For more detailed advice, there is guidance within the Working Safely During Coronavirus COVID guidance, which is published on the gov.uk website. This includes working safely during COVID-19, offices and contact centres, vehicles, shops and branches, other people's homes, in factories, plants and warehouses, restaurants, pubs, bars and takeaway services, and those who work in close contact services such as barbers and hairdressers. There is guidance aimed at operators of heritage attractions that are open to the public, for example castles, historic houses, historic parks, gardens and more, and additional guidance aimed at the visitor economy, such as theme parks and a variety of activities and events which take place at hotels, convention and exhibition centres, and conference halls and meeting rooms. There is guidance produced for outdoor cinemas and museums, and in addition to all this government guidance, there are also industry standards which we have put in associated links to as well. We have included checklists to take you through the main steps to open your business and trade safely. These focus on people visiting your site, such as your employees, visitors, customers, and delivery drivers. We'll give you some pointers for consulting with your staff about changes to the workplace. There are also some templates for guidance to issue to staff and to visitors before coming back to site, which you can amend with your procedures. There is a section for considerations on bringing your building back into use after being out of action for some time. For example, some checklists on Legionella which you can do on your water systems. There is also a link to the latest guidance on air condition and ventilation supplies to businesses and premises. This section also includes considerations around your site plans and movement around your building. The next section has considerations around enhanced cleaning and personal hygiene. The guidance for specific types of work will give you examples of other types of risk mitigation. The objective is to ensure workers maintain social distancing guidelines of 2 meters at best, or 1 meter with risk mitigation where 2 meters is not viable. Remember, the purpose of the controls you put in place are to keep people out of each other's breathing zones. This can be achieved by using a combination of controls such as distance, reducing the number of contacts someone has and the time spent with them, physical barriers, and reducing face-to-face contact by things like side-to-side working and back-to-back working. For close contact work, such as hairdressers and barbers, there is now guidance regarding wearing visors. We have also included a section on the NHS test and trace system, which local public health and environmental health officers will be part of, and you may be contacted by them. Let's keep our districts open and play your part as an employer. Make your workplaces as safe as possible and encourage workers to self-isolate if requested, and then support them when in isolation. Although this may seem disruptive for business, it's less disruptive than an outbreak of Covid-19 in the workplace and far less disruptive than periods in lockdown. Thank you for your time.
So I'm sorry that's a video, but it just keeps a consistent message for everyone about the toolkit, really. And I think we're sort of getting back to normal now, but look, nobody wants a Leicester happening down here. So I think this toolkit is still absolutely essential to how we continue to run our businesses. And before we go to questions, I don't know if anyone on the call has opened a leisure hospitality industry this weekend, and just wondered if you have, how did it go, and how you're feeling. Has anybody done that on the call?
Good question. Jump in, anyone.
Okay, so from that, I'm assuming that no one's open to the hospitality leisure sector, because that's going to be fairly hard hit, as we've found out, because 3 pubs have already had to close down after opening on Saturday, and so it's really close contact stuff, and the toolkit is really so important. So now, look, I've waffled on, and we've got our 2 specialist officers in the room. Mike Berry, who by the way has got a great surname, and Lee Taylor. So I don't know if anyone's got any questions to ask of those guys about your particular business. It's an ideal opportunity. Probably you won't get it very frequently when you can ask specialists about your business and how you can mitigate risks. So if I can leave the floor to Mia to manage the chickens, did you say, or the cats?
Cats, I think I'm dealing with today, but they're always very nice cats, Jason. So the floor is open, everyone. I'm always good at filling a silence while people are plucking up the courage to go first. But who'd like to jump in and talk to their operation opening up and some of the worries they've got? All a bit quiet out there at the minute.
We have got some examples that we've worked through before. Perhaps Lee, you could sort of talk about outdoor gyms and the like.
Oh yeah, please do.
I was going to say, what about the mental health aspects and things like that? Because one of the key things that we're finding, and certainly I've been doing some mental health training with local government departments who've had management teams that have been very stressed during this period. So I know there's the physical aspects of going back into the workspace, but what about the mental health aspects and people feeling nervous about? Certainly we're seeing an increase in things like OCD, anxiety and trauma through people who've lost people through this period of time. So I think that's another aspect that I think, I don't know whether that's added somewhere, but what about, that's kind of welfare?
Thank you, Richard, so much for that. It's on a lot of our minds.
I think you make a fair point. This toolkit does not address that. It addresses the physical need to reopen your business rather than mental need. I know as a local authority that there are support measures out there, but each individual business needs to be consulting their own employees during and after opening, and we stressed that already. So that's not within the toolkit. So I'm sorry, perhaps we need to add it.
Yeah, it's a very good spot, Richard. Thank you very much for that. We're going to have to do some work behind the scenes, I think, Jason, to really address that. It is a biggie for so many of our operations around.
It is. We're seeing it in our employees and family and friends. It's a big one. I can't deny it. Really,
really is, and likely to be persistent as well. not necessarily seeing symptoms or in the early days, but we've all been discombobulated by it, and people will be discombobulated, if you like, by coming back into the workplace, however that might be.
I was just going to say, because obviously we're hearing from the charity Mind, who we do partner with, that the long-term effects of mental health are going to far outlive COVID itself. So I think it is a bit of a sort of major risk area. And I think in terms of skills and development, we need to make sure, and certainly this is something I'm pushing for, is for more managers to be trained on how to deal with staff, and also to self-care. You can't drink from an empty cup, and managers and leaders that are going back into the workplace, I think, really need to have those skills available to them to be able to spot symptoms, signs, and all that sort of stuff. So that's certainly something else I'd definitely be pushing for.
So Jason, the team obviously can't answer that one, Richard, and I'll ask Jason to actually introduce his experts and what they're expert in a minute. But I'm making a mental note, and Karen's making a note here, that we ought to try a session just to complement this one on just that aspect, Richard, and maybe getting somebody from Mind would be a good start. So thank you very much for that thought. Sorry, we can't handle it much more on the call today. You were going to talk, Lee, about some of the challenges that gyms and leisure centres are facing, and how you're helping there.
Yeah. I mean, a few weeks ago, I was consulting with a gym business, and this was just prior to the reopening of the gym businesses. Sorry, not the reopening of gym businesses, but the relaxation of the outdoor exercise measures. Mm-hmm. And they were concerned, and we managed to sort of get them to the right part of the guidance. We were instrumental in saying, okay, here is, do your risk assessment as per the toolkit. It's 6 or groups of 6, as it was then. I think it still is. Groups of 6, so you can do that, but outside, not indoors. There's access allowed, not to changing rooms, but to toilets. And we went through the whole bit, and we personalised that for them particularly, and the health and hygiene measures. And they took that, and they went away, and they got themselves up and running again. And since then, they've now gone to the next stage, and now they're sort of they were sort of surviving by doing online stuff and online training sessions through the main outbreak. But now they've been able to stay afloat. And then they're back in content. Now they're back in, and they're training. They're small, and now they've got their program back on. But small groups again, suitably social distanced, all the equipment and all the vast raft of hygiene measures associated with that now, so they're able to continue going. And on a similar note, also had to deal with another gym business who were dealing with elite sportsmen and competition, for example, and they were then, and that's a different kettle of fish, because they are allowed to train indoors, but they have to be recognised and registered as a centre for elite performance or similar with their with their sports governing body. And so that's how we're seeing the footballers and everybody maintain their training while they're going about their business, and how they can all train together. So that's it's just a little snapshot of some of the support we've been giving, but then on the other side, this is also very much applicable to hotel gyms, small gyms combined with other establishments such as universities and so on and so forth. So what we try and do is we just try and take the individual's needs and try and condense what the guidance down into the specific things that they can do to reopen, because taking a vast raft of guidance is a difficult thing, and trying to pick through it all to get to the bit that you need to find that's relevant to your business is quite difficult at times when you're faced with so much. So what we're trying to do at the minute is just trying to make sure that you help you guys to get to that information, that vital information, just far quicker than if you just left on your own with a piece of paper and a website. So that's just basically just one snapshot example of what we try and do on a day-to-day basis.
Super, thanks, Lee. And Mike, you're in the environment health space. It'd be really fascinating to get some of your insights. I mean, when I think environmental health, I think of in normal times, the kind of green 5 blobs on the sort of hygiene standard. I guess we need another set of blobs on your COVID-19 standard.
Yeah, I was going to say there has, obviously with the COVID situation, there has been a lot of inquiries for businesses who are looking into reopening or have reopened for advice. And I think this Better Business for All Toolkit is a really good product for businesses. It's a free product and it gives lots of information and also signposts to the various spaces. I've had a look around the district over the weekend, just the hospitality industries that have opened, and all seemed good in our area. Generally, the main busy places were hairdressers, barbers, where you had people queuing up outside. And then there's just been a few complaints about social distancing at hairdressers and barbers, and the hairdressers not wearing a visor or any face protection as such. So that's the general inquiry that's been coming in. And just with regards to the pub that had to close down, they actually closed down on themselves. They weren't advised to close down. It was their decision to close down. So the media are hyping that up a bit because it is one of the first ones. But it is the pub that chose to close down and have a deep clean. But yeah, it is interesting times, but we are there to support businesses and offer advice and help as and when.
Thanks, Mike. I'm just picking up a few questions in the chat here. You guys are principally covering, if you like, the southern part of the region. Is there a similar operation north of the region and in other regions? And recognizing we've got a couple of people from Wales here. Your colleagues in Wales as well?
So this toolkit has been benchmarked as national standard. So it's gone out to all the growth hubs across the country as what should be used. So when you say the region, Better Business for All in this particular case works at Somerset, Devon, Torbay and Plymouth. However, this toolkit is applicable to all businesses across the UK because it's national government guidance. So we say north or south, it's UK-wide guidance, and it can be used by anybody. So if you know businesses, for example, that are in Yorkshire or Scotland or what have you, feel free to pass this on for them to help them. It's not Devon specific, it's not Somerset specific, it's government guidance specific. I hope that clears that up.
Yeah, that's very helpful. Yeah, your issues in southern Cornwall are the same as your issues in North Gloucestershire. Yeah, okay, thanks very much. So just there was just a little thread there picking up on the mental health, and maybe this is still an unfair question, but we'll give it a go anyway. And I guess it's dealing with staff who are having difficulty returning to their place of work, and they're claiming mental health concerns, maybe even the physical health concerns. They're not comfortable that the workplace is good by their standards. Do you want to help with how the dialogue needs to go there?
Yeah, I mean, first of all, we would look at saying what type of premise is it. First of all, because there are different sort of measures and things that can be put in place for hospitality industry, pubs, clubs, but also offices as well. And we've mentioned the video mentions all the various different types of guidance and working safely that there are. So we'd have to define what it was first. I can only speak from personal experience. I have been dealing with a sort of a small complaint that has been in particular from one person who has big concerns about going back to their office, and it is difficult. All we can really do is try and encourage and look into the situation, and we did look into the situation quite thoroughly as we could in the circumstances in relation to, was there social distancing in place, is there an issue with are the guidelines being followed, or is there the risk assessment? We looked at the risk assessment. We did as best we could to look at the actual premises itself, and that's still sort of out to the jury in terms of what, not literally, but just a figure of speech, just out there in terms of, we're still sort of considering that one at the minute because that's ongoing. But it is what you get from this particular complainant. And what you will get with some people is there is a fear, and it's very difficult to manage. And as long as and I think it all goes back to taking the necessary and reasonable steps in the circumstance. If you've taken all the reasonable steps that you can to ensure that the guidance is being followed, so that you'll consider the employees' needs in terms of home working, why they're doing what they're doing, what their fears are, and if you've done your best, then at that moment it's then to look at, okay, what can we do further to that? And but providing, as an employer, if you're doing your best to follow the guidance within and you're doing what's reasonable, then there is nothing what more can be expected to be done in the circumstances. But it is a difficult situation because, of course, what one person's view of safe is totally different to another person's view of safe, and there will be, obviously, hopefully there will be somewhere in the middle ground where employee and employer can get together and there can be a solution to it. But it is a difficult situation and a challenge in each individual instance.
Thanks, Lee. Looking out for any hands going up.
I was just going to say it's probably a people management aspect to this as well. You know, taking into account that sorry, I'm obviously looking at this from a people perspective because I'm a HR and training consultancy. So I'm thinking about, you know, certainly staff should be talking to the HR teams and sort of, because there might be reasonable adjustments and people might be suffering from various conditions. They might have vulnerabilities that the employer needs to be aware of, and certainly the employer doesn't want to become liable for those. So I'd say, you know, thinking about flexible working practices as well. Do they need to come back? Do they actually physically need to come back?
Yeah. All the while I can look at it from a legal perspective, there's very little that legal perspective can actually do to help the actual employee. It's only provides guidance for the employer to provide some guidelines for the employer to provide a safe workplace for customers and for employees. Where the solution will be in that will be through other methods, and usually through negotiation between the two parties. Hopefully that situation I mentioned will be resolved when the two parties can get together and there can be some confidence between the two that they've got each other's best interests especially the employees' best interests at heart. So yeah, I agree with what you say there.
Thanks. Carol, did you want to come in there?
Yeah, hello everybody. It's just a little bit off the subject, but on the subject, because in the guide you talked about visitors to the site. I'm working in recruitment and have been recruiting throughout this, and one of the things that I think has been really interesting is considering the people that are coming in, whether it be visiting your site just to visit or actually coming in to recruit, to have an interview. Communication, I think, is of what you are doing as a company is really, really vital, because I had an instance where somebody was going along for an interview and they were very sort of hesitant, and then they opened up that they were shielding their son at home, and as much as they wanted to go and get a new job, they were very, very worried about what they were going to get when they got on site. And I felt it was very much a duty of care as a recruiter to make sure that the company knew about their situation and could put methodologies in place. So I think actually as a company, having some sort of documentation that you send out as well to people that are going to be visiting your site, not just employers, is something that maybe is being overlooked at the moment, but is actually just as important as a duty of care to people coming in.
Thanks, Carol. Anybody want to pick up on that?
There are some hints and tips about how you make it safe for suppliers and visitors as well. So it does cover that off. And it's also about having a frank and honest conversation at this point in time, isn't it? It really is. Yeah. So thanks for that. And there's a question in the chat from Simon.
There is.
Around large gatherings indoors may be lifted. Well, I don't know when the answer to that is. That's anyone's guess. But I was on a call with Gary Streeter MP, who's, when I asked that question, said social distancing will be with us another 12 to 18 months. So take what you would of that. So I don't know the answer to that question, but I think there's going to be social distancing for some time.
Yeah, that's a really, really important insight for us all, and I think many of us would be not surprised. But it's calls like this that we try and work out. So how do you achieve the effect you want while keeping social distancing and keeping people not only actually safe but feeling comfortable, feeling safe enough in the environment? Yeah. Anybody else want to chip in with how they see the large gatherings issue? Anybody themselves got the large gathering issue?
My point of view, just too early to say, really. The events have to go through a permission granting process anyway, which is stringent enough. So to add further COVID restrictions on top of that is going to, it just adds further work for anybody wanting to plan or even put on an event. So it's we definitely sympathise with the situation. Just prior to COVID, one of the Better Business Rules projects was to look at simplifying the whole event planning process and registration process for the area. And as soon as COVID came along, of course, that had to take a back burner. But yeah, it's definitely it's a huge area, and to think about mass gatherings and COVID, it's in the current light as well, where the general impression of the public seems to be that everything's going back to normal. And I think we saw that at the weekend to a bit of an extent. We saw a number of people out who were perhaps sort of like, oh well, it's all fine now to do this. And it's just I think it's just remembering that no, we're still in this at the moment. And while things are relaxing, and good thing too, it's just we still need to be a bit careful at the minute. But unfortunately, no further information, no substantive information on that area at the minute, I'm afraid.
Just obviously from what I've seen, because obviously I'm linked up a bit into what Hong Kong have been doing and China and over there, and they're emerging from this earlier than we are. And certainly I know that some of the employers over there have been having rota systems as well. So making sure that people are, and grouping people together so that if an infection happens, then you know that it's going to be only affecting that group that are in that day. So thinking about how employers are actually rotating staff to come in and out of the workplace is actually also a very smart thing to consider right now, so that you can at least, people aren't intermingling into different groups. They're actually cohabitate, in almost like a little family group within their business structures. So I've certainly seen that happening a lot, but also the encouragement of people actually still to maintain a flexible working practice and actually to avoid coming in where at all possible. And I think that's certainly going to continue in the mid to long term. And also I think that we're going to see lots of employers really considering their premises longer term and whether they actually need to have that fixed cost hanging over them whilst we emerge into a recovery. I think lots of people will be considering new ways of working and perhaps trying to avoid people coming together in large groups at all.
Your last point I completely concur with, because I think that there could be some economic consequences for high streets and industrial areas where a business has got sort of 20 desks for 20 staff, and that's actually, we've been working perfectly happily from home. Let's have like one meeting room and that's it, and carry on working from home. I understand some people saying productivity's gone up, some people saying it's gone down, but you make a good point on that. And I've also heard about the work bubbles, where the same group can work together and you clock in different times and that sort of stuff. So the Toolkit does allude to some of that as well. So it does give hints and tips on those sort of bits. Yeah.
Before I turn to Karen's question on air conditioning, do you want to pick up on the wider point that Richard made about learning from, particularly overseas, other nations that arguably are kind of ahead of us, watching what they're doing, watching arguably the mistakes that are being made, perhaps? So that,
I think, Mia, that's a question from Matt Hancock. For us, I mean, we're just interpreting national government guidance.
Yeah.
And it's those guys in the cabinet office that be looking at that. Sorry.
But yeah, there's nothing to say that there's not a suitable sources of innovation over here in the UK as well. Like I was only reading a document this morning that Jason put my way, funnily enough, that has well, it's a draft document, but it had noted down some good guidance. Actually, it was in relation more to like beaches, countryside, and open spaces and those sorts of areas. Obviously, in results to all the Bournemouth pictures. Bless Bournemouth, former stomping ground of mine. But it's in response to that. But that actually, when that document comes out, it'll be good to forward to you guys, because that included details of good practice that's currently being employed now. So if something doesn't satisfy, it just shows something that doesn't satisfy. Yeah, you can see good guidance from other industries, but also we can also create our own as well if needs be, and it's within keeping with the guidance. For example, certain beaches have started operating ticket systems whereby it's 1 in, 1 out, and you have a ticket and that's it, and that's how you access the beach. And so as to keep the numbers to a suitable within segregating circles and areas for each individual and such, and lots and lots of different ideas in relation to that, car parking, queuing, and all sorts. It's all out there and all available. So I'm sure some of you have already thought up of your own ingenious way how to socially distance in your particular area, because of course it is different for everyone. Each individual little premise is different, each little business is different, how people even enter and leave and how they interact with everyone, it's all different. So I'm sure if we discussed it around us, there would probably be a couple of good ideas that we could probably put on the table right now that would be good things to follow. So yeah, but definitely learn off each other, but of course learn off of the best practice we've seen already.
Cheers, Lee. Let's have a little innovation moment. Anybody seen anything particularly creative, particularly innovative that either you've been responsible for, or you've seen? Anybody want to toss something in there?
Yeah.
Louise.
So is that?
It's Louise.
Yeah, sorry. I mean, it was just on the grouping thing. My daughter's in year 10 at secondary school, and they're doing the grouping, and they're moving them around the school in groups. They're going to the lessons in the groups. They're coming in and out at different times. So it does work. How they're going to cope when everybody has to go back in September, I don't know. They've only got the 1 year to deal with. But the whole grouping model is actually quite a good one, because you just move that group around the building, and I don't see why it couldn't happen just as efficiently and effectively in business. I've been quite impressed by the way they've done it.
Yeah, that's great news. Jason, you were coming in.
Yeah, I was just going to say that there's a coastal town in Spain that's hired a drone company, and they're flying over the beaches. And when the people get too close, they obviously in Spanish tell them they're getting too close and to move away. So they've got a loudspeaker on a drone. It's just quite bizarre, but it must work. And they've also roping off beaches. So you've got like a 4 meter squared section, and then another 4 meter squared section between you and everybody else, and that's where the tickets come into it. So there's an awful lot out there, and so yeah, I think it's just a lot of learning, as you say, Richard.
Any other good spots out there, Richard?
I was just going to say, this is a really good checklist that you've sent through, Jason, and I'm certainly going to be sending it to people I know. And I'm just thinking, on the basis of actually sort of an employer going through that, this comms piece with employees, I think, that Lee was touching on a little bit, I think is really key. It's almost like that reassurance that we thought about everything, and almost documenting what you've done, and almost alluding as well to that. I don't know whether anybody saw the World Health Organization announcement the other day, which was about you having to take personal responsibility for video. I don't know whether anybody saw that.
It's a very good point.
That's something every employee should watch. In my mind, we should be playing that to people and saying, you watch this before you come in. But I do think that having something that goes out to employees that says, these are all the risks that we've now undertaken. These are all the mitigating ways that we're now making the place safer. But also that thing about personal responsibility, I think, needs to be in there.
Yeah, you can't legislate personal responsibility, can you? But this toolkit does encourage you to publish your risk assessments and then consult with your staff as well and your employees. So that it's all there encouraging you to do that. Yeah. But it's just not, I don't think it's bound by legislation unless you've got a certain number of employees.
Yeah.
Then you have to. Sorry, Lee.
I think it's not a mandatory ask, but it is expected, shall we say, not legally required, but expected if you've got 50 or more employees. I learned that the other day on another call. Yeah, so yeah. But yes, it and in the toolkit as well also has access to it's all fine and good videos and things, but a more cost-effective method. It does link also some posters as well that also sort of state those things as well in a concise form on a poster for you if that's the way you want to go as well.
Thanks.
Just going back to
any
the
standard
risk assessment. Oh, sorry.
So I was going to go Michael next.
Yeah, I was just going back to the risk assessments. It has got a COVID risk assessment, and going on Richard's point about the mental health can come under a risk assessment. But I think, like first aiders are common practice now, I don't think it'll be long before you're asking for mental first aiders to be trained as an employer. And I know there are mental health courses out there. So I think, if you can get on a mental health first aid course or train some staff to do that, then I think that'd be beneficial, certainly for now and in the future.
Well, I must pitch in there because I am a mental health first aid trainer, so I'll piggyback off that. But yeah, no, I think you're right about having something that where you can build in the wellness piece for employees, definitely.
And that chimes with something that we were discussing pre-lockdown in the Institute. We were having a session where if there was one takeaway, it was stop thinking about health and safety. Start thinking about health, safety, and well-being in its wider sense, mental well-being as well. Yeah. No, thanks for that conversation. Anybody else want to chip in on that before I invite somebody to talk to us about air conditioning? Yeah. So in the chat here we got Karen concerned about air conditioning. Karen, do you want to?
It's a very specific question, and one for Mike really. But we all know that air conditioning is not great for us. You've on a plane, it's recirculated, so we all get sick. And I did read that, coming back to Richard's point, that in China they either already do have or are busy fitting air conditioning units that filter the air, because that is one of the things that they can do to minimise the risk of not just COVID, but anything circulating. I mean, should we? And I'm quite gung ho about going out and doing stuff and being sensible, but I would worry about going into a large building that has a shared air conditioning unit around literally hundreds of people. Is that something that we should be concerned about, that officers should be looking to rectify?
So the information that I got last week was the risk of getting COVID from air conditioning units is very, very small. So if that helps ease your mind, that was the information I got, and I think that's from Public Health England itself.
So is that based on, that must be based on some technical
some studies that they've done? Yes, I would imagine so. But yeah, the risk is very, very, very small.
Okay, well that reassures me.
I think throughout all this process, everything has been changing every single day. So when Lee and Mike said, yeah, I read something yesterday, it literally is like that. Oh, this came out this morning. This came out 2 hours ago. That's exactly what's been going on for the last 3 months. It's been crazy. But I think we've come to almost the close of where all the guidance is coming from. We'll still get bits and pieces coming through. But exactly what Mike said. Yeah, I read it yesterday. It's like bizarre to think that, but that's the way it's been for us, I'm afraid.
I think with organisations as well and businesses right the way throughout the world, really, they've had to be innovative, they've had to think on the spot. And it is, I mean, we speak about everything's so gloomy at the moment, but we have got to look at those businesses, distilleries that have turned around sanitizer, and companies introducing pieces of tech that's going to improve the amount of people we have in different stores and things. So it is good that obviously we have to highlight these things as well, and we're all thinking on the spot at the moment, so we're all living today for today. Yeah.
Absolutely, Carrie-Anne. Does anybody want to pick up on another theme? I was going to just ask on building on some of those last points, and as you say, the guidance is coming through all the time. But do you think we've got the right balance between, hard and fast rules, like, it's 2 meters, it's 1 meter, and you know what? You've got to think for yourself. You've got to take responsibility as a owner of a business, as a director of business. Use the tools, but make your own risk assessment that you believe will work well for you, your employees, your clients, etc. You know, just give us a commentary about how you feel people are reacting to taking that responsibility and working it out for themselves.
Mm.
This is certainly, sorry, Mio, this is certainly making me think about almost going back to basics and almost thinking about your staff as new employees coming back into the workplace. You know, maybe there's an onboarding process here, you know, a reinduction of employees into new ways of working that we're going to have to adjust to. So it's almost as if blank piece of paper, you know, we're all having to pivot. We've got to think now, blank piece of paper, right, so we've got to reinduct people in a way. So certainly from a training perspective, I'm thinking we need to be thinking about, you know, that aspect, which is, you know, training your managers and training your staff now in how we're going to work. And that includes everything from virtual working to running our meetings to town hall sessions that we're going to now run. So I think there is almost like this is the new way that we're going to be working as an organization piece.
Yeah, Carol's saying great point there in the chat. Yeah, you know, welcome back, Carol. You're new here. Look, this is not the office you walked out of 3 months ago. We need to start again. This is how things work around here. How comfortable are you with this? And by the way, some of the colleagues that you might have had a chit chat around the water cooler aren't going to be coming in. So, you know, yeah, really, really good point. Anybody want to build on that?
You can see that when you go out, and I've not been out very frequently because I'm trying to semi-shield, to be honest, but I did for my sins go and get some lunchtime chips for the kids. But when you go and pick up the chips, you can see those people that will not care, and they're talking to other people that close, and I'm standing sort of 3 meters away. And that's unfortunately, like you said before, Rich, it's taking personal responsibility for yourself. And you can see it in the high streets and places where people just won't do that.
Yeah.
It's very, very difficult.
Yeah, the interesting thing is that it's a good point that Richard made, but also you almost need a reinduction for customers, I think, as well, because customers are going to come in. Customers are going to come in and go, right, well, back to normal then. And it's like, hang on, it may be some communication is, I think probably it's essential that some communication is required with customers. I mean, some places like your average chip shop, I mean, that's an easy one to sort out, because you can see the people queuing down the street all 2 meters apart, and that's put in place, and that's fine. Well, at least you can at my local chippy anyway. And but of course, and I always say, and this is whether the rules are hard or fast or whether they're flexible. I'm actually personally a fan of, to answer the earlier question, of flexible solutions, because it means as someone like myself, I don't have to come down with a hard and fast yes or no. You know, I can say to you, let's work it out. Let's see what the solution is. We'll keep it within the guidance, the spirit of the guidance. And but I always say, whether it's hard or fast or relaxed, it's there's always going to 95% of people good, honest, and they're going to try their best to comply. There's 5%, and within that, it's probably 3% who don't know and make a mistake, and there's going to be 2% who are just going to do what they want no matter what. And it's just knowing, it's just making sure that I think, for a business perspective, that you've done everything that you can really in the circumstance, and you're prepared for when that 2% comes along. And but the rest of people, you can sort of trust in them, and they're all right, or they've just made a mistake.
Cheers, Lee. Watching the time, it's probably a great time to have a last point from each of you before I round up. So a good last thought from Lee there. Mike, do you want to give us a last thought for us all? You're on mute. It sounded very wise.
Just testing those lip readers out there. Just from the Better Business for All, the toolkit is an exceptional piece of work. We take on board the comments about the mental health on it. So have a look through it. If you've got any questions, or just go to your local authorities, your local trading standards, we're there to help you. we want to see you exist as a business. We want to see you develop as a business. So use that information wisely and contact us for any help. Great message. Jason?
Yeah, and I think the same. The people who developed this said, you know, as we're touring via Zoom, if you've got any feedback, come back and we can try and alter it and change it. So again, once you've gone through that and you've had, you know, different thoughts and questions, please come back to me, and I'll put my email address in the chat now. It is an evolving tool. I mean, the world is evolving, as we know, but we're trying our level best to bring thousands of pages of guidance into one document. But I'll put my email address in here now for you to contact me direct.
Jason, thank you. And in rounding off, can I thank you and the team? As you've just said, thank you so much for putting trading standards on the map. And no, it's not all about policing. It really is about helping. And thanks for all that you do for all of us. We've covered a lot of ground, actually. We really have, from mental health to drones in Spain, to bubbles in China and local schools, to the myth of aircon, to thinking about taking personal responsibility, thinking about inducting our employees back again as new people to the workplace, thinking about whatever you're in, doing something different deliberately anyway, because there are subtle things that are different, even if they're less subtle. So thank you very, very much, one and all, for a great conversation. So a round of applause, Jason, Michael, Lee, and the team behind the scenes as well, for all you do. Thank you so much. And a good endorsement for your toolkit. So as Richard's going to do, and we're doing, let's promote that toolkit. It's got to be good for us all, indeed, as we take personal responsibility for ourselves and for our organizations as directors. So rounding off, let me just give a shout out for upcoming events. We're going to move our Tuesdays at 2s to kind of fortnightly, so the next one's a couple of weeks away, but there are other events going on. And I do see Alex there, who's going to be hosting something in a day or so. So Alex, do you want to give a quick plug for, I think there's only 1 or 2 remaining places for your sesh?
Okay, thank you very much. We have a session tomorrow, which I think there are 1 or 2 places, but as you say, only 1 or 2 places if people want it. The pictures I'm seeing are almost exemplary, almost exclusively exemplary, but possibly 1 or 2 could still be improved. And if you want to talk about that, that's what we're going to be doing tomorrow.
Well, how to do better zooming. Yeah,
exactly.
Good. Thanks, Alex. So good luck for that one tomorrow. Yeah, that's crept up on us. And in a couple of weeks' time, on the 21st of July, everyone, we've got David Owen, Chief Exec of G1st, LEP, the Local Enterprise Partnership. Says here in my script, it is one of the most successful LEPs in the UK, focusing on how that specific region is rebuilding and recovering. So there we go. That's Tuesday at 2 on the 21st. Meanwhile, I'll round up by wishing everybody a happy and productive recovery in whatever it is you're doing, and staying even safer, even more mentally stable, and for our employees and our clients and our customers, thanks to today's session. All the best, everyone. Tune in again in a couple of weeks' time. Thanks. Bye.